It usually doesn't happen in a dramatic way. It happens in the ordinary. You pray at night with sincerity, you mean it. You tell God you're done. You ask Him to help you. You feel a moment of relief, like your chest finally unclenched. And then a day or two later, sometimes the same day, you find yourself standing in the same doorway again. Same craving, same excuse, same just this once, same split-second decision that somehow feels inevitable. And afterward, the shame doesn't even scream anymore. It just sighs, like it's tired of repeating the conversation with you. If you've ever whispered, "God, why am I still like this?" you're not alone, and you're not automatically fake, but you do need to stop lying to yourself about what's happening. Because repeating the same sin after praying isn't just about willpower, it's about patterns. It's about what you run to when you're tired, lonely, triggered, bored, anxious, rejected, overstimulated, or quietly angry. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Sometimes you're not losing the battle because you didn't pray. You're losing because you prayed, but you didn't change anything that feeds the cycle. Listen, prayer is not a magic eraser for a life you keep building around temptation. Prayer is power, yes, but power is meant to be applied. If you keep planting the same seeds, you keep harvesting the same fruit. And God is not cruel for letting you see that. He's merciful. He's showing you the real battlefield. Here's where this gets real. A lot of believers pray for deliverance while secretly protecting the doorway to the sin. Not because they love sin more than God, but because the sin is doing a job for them. It's giving relief, escape, control, numbness, a sense of being wanted, a sense of being powerful, a sense of having something that doesn't require vulnerability. And until you admit what the sin is doing for you, you'll keep treating it like an enemy you can defeat with one emotional moment instead of a counterfeit comfort you keep choosing when life hurts. Ask yourself this slowly. What do you get from the sin that you're not getting anywhere else? That question isn't meant to excuse you. It's meant to expose the hook. Because every repeated sin has a hook, and the hook is rarely the action. The hook is the promise behind it. You'll feel better. You won't feel alone. You'll calm down. You'll be in control. You'll forget the pain. You'll finally be satisfied. And you already know how the story ends. You already know it never delivers what it promises. But in the moment, your body remembers the relief faster than your spirit remembers the cost. That's why you keep going back. And that's why simple shame-based motivation doesn't free you. Shame makes you promise big. Shame makes you perform for a day. Shame makes you hide. But shame does not heal what's underneath. It just adds pressure until you need the sin again to cope with the pressure. You get trapped in a loop. Sin, shame, promise, pressure, relapse, shame again. And after a while, you don't even feel shocked. You just feel tired. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Many people confuse praying about sin with repenting from sin. Praying can be emotional. Repenting is directional. Praying can happen while you still leave all the triggers in place. Repenting is when you turn, build boundaries, tell the truth, and accept real help. Repenting is when you stop treating sin like a private hobby and start treating it like a thief. Because it is. It steals your clarity. It steals your confidence. It steals your hunger for God. It steals your joy, and it always demands more. But let's go even deeper, because some of you don't just fall back into the same sin, you feel like you're being pulled into it, like there's a gravity you can't escape. And that's usually when the sin is connected to a deeper wound or a deeper habit loop. Your brain, your emotions, and your environment have formed a pathway. You've practiced the sin the way you practice a reflex. So when stress hits, the reflex activates before you even think. You're not choosing in a calm, rational way. You're reacting. This is why you can love God and still struggle. Because love is real, but training is real too. You wouldn't shame someone for flinching when a loud noise happens. That flinch is training. That flinch is reflex. But you also wouldn't tell them, just pray and the flinch will disappear, while they keep living in constant chaos. You would help them retrain their nervous system. You would help them create safety. You would help them build new responses. And that's exactly what spiritual freedom often requires. Not just prayer, but retraining. Prayer plus wisdom. Prayer plus structure. Prayer plus new habits. Prayer plus honest confession. Prayer plus accountability. Prayer plus removing access. Some of you are praying hard, but you're still feeding the appetite all day. You're praying at night and scrolling all afternoon. You're praying in the morning and watching the same triggers in the evening. You're praying for purity and keeping secret doors open. You're praying for freedom and still carrying the same private stash, the same contact, the same apps, the same late-night patterns, the same just-in-case escape route. And then you call your relapse mysterious. It's not mysterious. It's predictable. That's not condemnation. That's actually hope. Because what's predictable can be interrupted. Let me say it plainly. If you want God to deliver you from what you keep choosing, you have to stop making it easy to choose it. The enemy is not creative. He is consistent. He uses your patterns. He uses your tired moments. He uses your loneliness. He uses your hunger, not just physical hunger, your hunger to be seen, held, soothed, desired, validated. And if your only plan is, I'll be stronger next time, you will keep losing. Because strength is not your plan. Strength is a gift that flows through a plan. Now, here's the part that flips everything for a lot of people. It's possible to pray sincerely and still cling to the sin because you're using prayer as relief instead of surrender. This is subtle but deadly. Sometimes you pray after falling, and the prayer calms your conscience enough to keep the cycle going. You sin, then you pray, then you feel okay, then you drift back into the same environment, and the next trigger hits and you fall again. Prayer becomes the rinse cycle. It's not that prayer is wrong. It's that you're using prayer to avoid the pain of real change. Real change costs something. It costs comfort. It costs convenience. It costs your private control. It costs your pride. It costs the fantasy that you can beat this alone while keeping it secret. And that's why many believers stay stuck. Not because God won't help them, but because they won't step into the light. Let's talk about that secret part. Because this is where freedom begins. Most recurring sin thrives in secrecy. Secrecy is not just hiding from people, it's hiding from reality. It's protecting the sin with darkness so it can keep doing its job for you. And you tell yourself, I can't tell anyone, they'll think I'm disgusting. Or, I'll handle it myself first. Or, it's not that big. But secrecy is never neutral. Secrecy is fuel. The moment you bring a struggle into the light, it loses power. Not instantly, but noticeably. Because you stop living a double life. You stop acting like you're fine while dying inside. You stop carrying the weight alone. And some of you need to hear this. You think confession will make you lose dignity. But the truth is, secrecy already stole your dignity. Confession is how dignity comes back. Now, before your mind panics, confession doesn't mean broadcasting your sins to everybody. Wisdom matters. You need one trusted person, one mature believer, one mentor, one friend who won't glamorize the sin, won't shame you, won't leak your vulnerability, and won't turn your weakness into gossip. Just one. That one voice that can look you in the eyes and remind you who you are when you forget. That one voice that can ask you the hard questions you avoid. Because when you're alone, temptation feels convincing. When you're known, temptation feels exposed. Here's a mirror moment. The sin is strongest when you're isolated. Not because you're weak, because isolation is where lies sound true. Isolation is where you can rewrite reality. Isolation is where you can say, it doesn't matter. Isolation is where you can pretend you'll stop tomorrow. But when you're connected, truly connected, lies have less room to breathe. Now let's talk about the uncomfortable truth you may not want to hear. Sometimes you keep falling back into the same sin because you've built your identity around being the struggler. You don't say that out loud. But inside, you expect yourself to fail. You've rehearsed failure so many times that it feels like a personality trait. This is just me. I'll never change. I always mess up. And that belief becomes a prophecy. Because you don't fight like someone who expects victory. You fight like someone who expects relapse and just hopes it's not as bad. But you are not your pattern. You are not your relapse. You are not your weakness. Your identity is not the person who can't stop. Your identity is the person God is transforming. And that matters because you can't build a new life with an old name. There's a huge difference between humility and hopelessness. Humility says, I can't do this without God. Hopelessness says, I can't do this at all. Hopelessness is not humility. Hopelessness is a lie. And if you've been calling hopelessness being realistic, that's exactly how the enemy keeps you stuck. He doesn't need you to stop believing in Jesus. He just needs you to stop believing that Jesus can change you. Now let's get practical in a way that actually works, not in a way that sounds spiritual but changes nothing. First, identify your relapse pattern like a detective, not like a judge. Most people only analyze the sin itself. I did it again. But you need to analyze the path to it. What time does it usually happen? What emotion is usually present? What trigger is usually involved? Are you usually tired, lonely, angry, bored, overstimulated, avoiding something, feeling rejected, feeling like a failure? Because sin rarely shows up randomly. It shows up on schedule, and if you can learn the schedule, you can interrupt it. Now, for example, if you notice the sin happens late at night when you're alone and scrolling, then your freedom plan is not try harder. Your freedom plan is change the night. Put your phone outside your room. Set a hard shutdown time. Have a replacement routine ready. Sit with God for 5 minutes before bed with no screen. Text your accountability person when the craving hits. Go to sleep earlier. Remove access. If the sin happens when you're stressed after work, your plan isn't, I'll be more spiritual. Your plan is, I need a new decompression path. A walk, a shower, a journal, a short prayer spoken out loud, a workout, music that calms instead of triggers, a meal, a conversation, anything that teaches your body, we don't cope that way anymore. Second, stop trying to not sin and start trying to walk away earlier. Most people only fight at the final moment when the temptation is already roaring. But the battle is easier 2 steps earlier. That's where you win. Win the first glance. Win the first click. Win the first private compromise. Win the first, I'll just check. Win the first secret message. Win the first late-night linger. Because sin is rarely one decision. It's a chain of small decisions. And if you break the chain early, the relapse never happens. Third, replace the sin with something that meets the real need. This is where people roll their eyes, but it's real. If sin is a counterfeit comfort, you need real comfort. If sin is a counterfeit escape, you need real rest. If sin is a counterfeit connection, you need real community. If sin is a counterfeit power, you need real purpose. If sin is a counterfeit pleasure, you need real joy. God is not calling you to be empty, He is calling you to be filled. But you have to stop trying to fill yourself with poison. So when the craving hits, don't just say, stop. Say, what am I actually needing right now? Sometimes the need is sleep. Sometimes it's a hug. Sometimes it's a cry. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's a break. Sometimes it's honesty. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's forgiveness. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's help. And if you keep ignoring the need, the sin will keep presenting itself as the easiest way to meet it. Fourth, take away the easy access and stop calling it legalism. This is a big one. Some people refuse boundaries because they want to feel mature. They want to say, I can handle it. But if you keep falling in the same place, you don't need more confidence. You need more wisdom. If your phone is your trap, then you need phone boundaries. If certain content is your trap, then you need filters, restrictions, unfollows, deletions. If certain people are your trap, then you need distance. If certain settings are your trap, then you need new routines. That's not legalism, that's war. And you're in a war whether you want to admit it or not. Let's be honest. You don't need to prove how close you can stand to the fire without getting burned. You need to stop playing with the fire. Fifth, learn the difference between conviction and condemnation, because this alone changes how you recover. When you fall, condemnation says, you're disgusting, you'll never change, God is done with you. Conviction says, that's not who you are, come back, let's rebuild, let's turn. Condemnation pushes you away from God. Conviction pulls you toward God. Condemnation makes you hide. Conviction makes you confess. Condemnation makes you numb. Conviction makes you clean. So after a fall, your response matters. If you spiral into shame, you're more likely to fall again. Because shame creates the emotional pain that the sin has been medicating. But if you run to God quickly, honest, not theatrical, you break the loop. Now, here's the twist that many believers miss. The reason you keep falling back into the same sin, even after praying, might not be that your prayers are weak. It might be that you keep using prayer as a moment instead of a relationship. You treat God like emergency help after you've already crashed. You pray when you're bleeding, but you don't walk with Him when you're steady. And then you wonder why the next crash happens. God is not only your Savior from consequences, He is your shepherd for daily direction. And shepherding happens in the small. It happens in the mornings. It happens in the I'm tempted right now moments. It happens in the I'm lonely right now moments. It happens in the I'm angry and I want to numb moments. So prayer can't be only your apology. Prayer has to become your daily companionship. You don't only talk to God after you fall, you talk to Him when you're walking toward the edge. And yes, that takes practice. At first it will feel awkward. You'll feel like you're saying the same thing. You'll feel like nothing is changing. But you're building a new reflex. You're building a new pathway. Now I'm going to give you a clear, simple, realistic plan you can start tonight. Not a plan that sounds heroic. A plan that works. Tonight, identify the trigger window. Before bed, write down the last 3 times you fell. Not the details you're ashamed of. The pattern, time, place, emotion, trigger. Then, circle the earliest moment you could have turned away. That's your new battlefield. Tonight, remove 1 access point. 1, not 10. 1, delete the app. Move the phone outside the room. Block the site. Unfollow the account. Remove the contact. Change the routine. 1 access point removed is 1 step toward freedom. Tonight, create a replacement routine for the trigger window. If your trigger is late-night boredom, your replacement might be phone away, quick shower, 5 minutes of scripture, 2 minutes of honest prayer, sleep. If your trigger is stress, your replacement might be walk outside, breathe, drink water, pray out loud, message a friend, then rest. It doesn't have to be spiritual theater. It has to be different. Tonight, tell 1 person, not everybody, 1 person. Send a simple message. I need accountability. I keep falling back into a pattern. Can you check in with me? That message is warfare. That message is you choosing light over secrecy. Tomorrow, practice fast obedience once. When the first nudge comes, stop, turn, walk away. Do it fast, not perfectly, fast. Because sensitivity grows when you respond quickly. Tomorrow, replace shame with truth. If you fall again, don't disappear for a week. Don't do the I'll come back when I'm better thing. Run back immediately. Say, God, I fell. I'm here. Show me what led to it. Help me rebuild. Then adjust one thing. Freedom is not usually one giant leap. It's many small adjustments that add up to a new life. Now, let me speak to the person who's exhausted by this message because you've tried so many times. You've cried so many times. You've promised so many times. You've deleted things and re-downloaded them. You've blocked and unblocked. You've gotten serious and then drifted again. And you're tempted to conclude, this is hopeless. Listen, the fact that you still hate the cycle is proof you're not dead inside. The fact that you still care is proof God is still working. The fact that you're still fighting, even clumsily, is proof you haven't surrendered. Don't let the enemy turn your repeated attempts into evidence that you can't change. Your repeated attempts are evidence that you want to change. Now you just need a better strategy and deeper surrender. And deeper surrender doesn't mean bigger emotions. It means less secret control. It means you stop keeping your escape hatch. It means you stop protecting the habit. It means you stop planning to fail. Some of you, if you're honest, still have a plan to fail. You don't say it like that. But you keep the door unlocked. You keep the option available. You keep the private stash. You keep the late-night privacy. You keep the unfiltered feed. You keep the number. You keep the back door. And you call it just in case. but just in case is exactly how you lose. Close the door, not because you're trying to earn God's love, because you're trying to protect your future. Now let's talk about hope in a way that doesn't feel cheesy. God is not disgusted by your struggle. He is opposed to the sin, but He is not repulsed by your weakness. Jesus did not come for the people who never fall. He came for the people who are sick of falling and want a way out. But here's the part that will save you if you believe it. God's grace is not only forgiveness after you fail. God's grace is power before you fail. Grace is strength in the moment. Grace is clarity in the fog. Grace is a way of escape you actually take. Grace is a new desire forming slowly. Grace is the courage to confess. Grace is the humility to accept help. Grace is the patience to rebuild. And the reason many people don't experience grace as power is because they only approach grace as pardon. They only run to God after the relapse. But grace works best when you run to God at the first whisper of temptation. So here's a line you might need to start using out loud in real time. God, I'm being pulled right now. Help me choose you. Not later. Right now.